YouTube, and we back again with another reaction. This time we got cave exploring gone wrong. Let's go on to see, bro.
6 men were exploring the 300-foot deep Cascade Cave on Vancouver Island when something went horrifyingly wrong.
Vancouver Island.
As experts in online
Vancouver,
education,
Canada.
Purdue University Global gives you all the
Canada has
flexibility
caves.
you need to balance school.
Well,
This is
it's
your
Vancouver,
story.
mama.
On the west coast of British Columbia, Canada, is the beautiful Vancouver Island. Home to the province's capital, Victoria, Vancouver Island is the largest and most populated island along the west coast of the Americas. Vancouver Island also has a diverse climate with some of the mildest temperatures anywhere in Canada. The temperature in January rarely drops below freezing, and the summer temperatures can reach as high as 33 degrees Celsius or 91 Fahrenheit on a regular basis. The interior of the island also has significant mountains similar to those that are typical of the rest of the Pacific Northwest, and as a result there are large differences in the amount of precipitation across the island. The interior of the island can see as much as 262 inches, which is the most in all of North America, whereas the eastern tip in the rain shadow of the mountains sees as little as 24 inches. In addition, the majority of this precipitates during the winter months. In fact, the rainfall during the summer season amounts to less than 1/5 of the rain during the winter season. And if you've ever been to the Pacific Northwest, you're probably all too familiar with the rainy months. At 6 a.m. on December 5th, 2015, Jason Story bent down in the dark over his bed to kiss his wife Caroline goodbye. That day, he would be traveling 80 miles northwest of his home in the city of Duncan on Vancouver Island to explore a cave with 5 friends. He walked out of his house that morning and the rain was coming down steadily, as is the case with most days in the winter months on the Pacific Northwest. Jason was dressed for the wet weather though, not only for the trip there, but also for the conditions inside the cave. He had on some rubber boots, neoprene socks, 3 shirts, overalls, and a water-resistant jacket. He also recently bought a helmet with a mounted headlamp for just this occasion. Up to this point, Jason had only been caving 4 times, and the cave that he would be going to that day was
He's only been caving 4 times. Why are you going to a cave if you only been doing cave work, or just if you only been doing it for 4 times? Why are you going to a cave, bro?
It's going to be his toughest cave yet. Near the city of Port Alberni is a cave known as Cascade Cave. It's dangerous enough that there's a locked hatch covering the opening, and the key to the hatch is only given to groups that sign waivers indicating that they understand the dangers of exploring the cave system.
Bro,
In addition,
bro, you gotta sign a waiver to get into a cave, and they got a hatch on it, and now you gonna try to go there?
the location of the cave is kept somewhat secret within the caving community to ensure that people can't get hurt exploring it or disturb the formations inside of it. The interior of Cascade Cave is about a mile long and descends to 338 feet under the Earth's surface.
Bro, do y'all see this, bro? It's a ladder. You go down, it's water. Then you see how tight it is. More water, all this water. Like, bro, who doing all this, bro? Look at that little tight little spot right here. Squeeze through there. Bro, who doing all this, bro?
It's also filled with impossibly tight and winding tunnels that are just barely passable by an adult person. After leaving
Bro.
his house that morning, Jason met up
Bastards crawl. Look how tight this is, bro. Who
with
is
his friends
doing this?
Andrew and Adam, who were paramedics, and Zach, who is a chef and volunteer firefighter. Together, they
Oh, so he got some friends. All right, so he ain't going by
drove
himself.
into Port Alberni, where they picked up the key for the hatch and met up with 2 more friends, Matt and Taylor, who were both computer programmers.
So they're going 7 deep.
Jason was the oldest of the group by about a decade at 43 years old and the least experienced caver among them. It was his friend Andrew who introduced him to the sport, and if there was anyone you'd want to be your teacher, it was Andrew. Not only was he an expert caver and former cave guide, he had a wiry frame perfect for caving. His job as a paramedic also made him invaluable if anything went wrong during their descent. From Port Alberni, they drove up a forested, unmarked trail for about half a mile before parking in a small clearing. After parking, they took inventory of all their climbing gear, which included ropes, harnesses, carabiners, and a small ladder that they would use to descend into the opening of the cave. They also brought a small gas stove, food, water, and a first aid kit containing a Mylar space blanket. If you've never seen one of these before, they look almost like a blanket made out of aluminum foil, and they're excellent at preventing heat from escaping. After checking their gear, they set off into the forest to find the entrance to Cascade Cave. The entrance to the cave was just a small steel hatch in the ground that you could easily miss if you weren't specifically looking for it, which is incredible considering what it leads to. They got to the hatch at about 10 a.m. and reached into the small hole beside it with the key to open the lock. Next, they fixed their aluminum ladder to 2 carabiners near the opening and then fixed ropes to their harnesses to belay one another down the ladder. All of them descended into the cave, and then the last person in closed the hatch and locked it once again. With it closed, the last little bit of light filtering into the cave was now gone. The key was then tied to the bottom of the ladder because if it got lost, there would be no way for them to reopen the hatch and exit the cave. From the surface, the cave descends 30 feet straight down into the first chamber. Now relying on their headlamps, they took...
Why don't y'all just keep the lid open?
their first look around the subterranean abyss that would be their home for the next few hours. It was damp and cold, just barely above freezing, but this is what they expected, so they started down the first narrow passageway from the first chamber. On either side were jagged boulders, and the ceiling was dripping with water from all of the moisture. As they continued deeper into the cave, the dripping water eventually turned into a small stream along the cave floor.
Home is where the office is, gym is, pool is, date night is.
First, it was up to their ankles, and then up to their shins as they crouched through the narrow tunnels. At around 45 minutes in, Adam decided that he couldn't go any further. He had tweaked his back a few weeks prior, and all of the bending over was making it flare up again. He said goodbye and good luck to everyone, and then Matt went with him back to the exit of the cave. Once he was out safely, Matt locked the hatch once again and then rejoined the rest of them to continue further into the cave. For the next hour and a half, they slowly made their way through the narrow passage.
So what was the point of one of the dudes going if he had a bad back anyway? What was the point of you going, bro? You had the bad back before. You said it happened at work. You had the bad back before. What was the point of you stopping us while we on our mission?
Crawling and sliding. Inside the cave, the entire group was always within about
He was
100
smart.
feet
That's what it
from the
is.
first
He was
person
smart.
to the
He
last
said, bro,
person.
what are we
But
doing
most of
here?
the time,
Let
they
me
couldn't
get out of
actually
here.
see one another because they were obscured by the rock. Jason was amazed by what he was seeing. There are over 1,000 caves and tunnels on Vancouver Island, and they're all completely unique. Eventually, they made it to the first feature that makes Cascade unique, which is an area known as Bastard's Crawl. This passageway is too narrow to be able to stand, so you have to crouch down and crab walk through it. It's also on a sharp slope downwards, so you have to brace yourself against the ceiling so you don't slip down the wet rock. After exiting Bastard's Crawl, they reached the only major waterfall in the cave, known as Double Trouble. The reason that it's called Double Trouble is that the stream coming down through the cave up to that point hits a rock at the top of the waterfall and splits it into two streams. The streams then fall 50 feet down onto the rocks in a large chamber below. At the top of the waterfall, they set up their rappel lines and then slowly made their way down the wet, slippery rocks into the chasm.
What is
The
our
entire
purpose of
time,
doing
the
this?
water was just spraying down on either side as they tried to keep from slipping on the wet footholds. As Jason was going down, he could hardly believe how hard his heart was beating. He wanted a harder challenge though, and that's exactly what he was getting. After they all finally made it down, they walked a little ways away from the waterfall to regroup for some lunch. They also noticed that it seemed like the water coming down Double Trouble was getting stronger as time went on. Just before 1 p.m. and about 3 hours into the cave, they sat there using the little stove to heat up some beef stew. Although they were 200 feet underground in the light of just some headlamps, this is exactly what they hoped the day would be. About 20 minutes later, they started moving again, and with only a quarter mile left in the cave, they would be at the end in less than an hour. When they got about 300 feet from where they ate lunch, Zach started shivering violently. After 3 hours in the cave, the short rest was just long enough for the cold to creep in. But because they were almost at the end anyway, they all decided that they would turn back together and head for the exit. The group retraced their route all the way to Double Trouble and noticed that the sound of the water was a lot louder and visibly the streams were a lot larger. Matt started up the waterfall first, then Arthur would go, then Jason, Zach, and Andrew would come up from behind as the most experienced caver. There was also a lot more mud being washed down into the cave, and it was sticking to their feet as they walked. The climb up is always a lot slower than the climb down, and with how hard the water was coming down now, it was even more difficult to find footholds on the rock. After Jason successfully made it up Double Trouble, he was wondering how the water had gotten so much stronger so quickly. He wondered how runoff from the rain could be adding so much to the flow of the streams. Beyond Double Trouble, Jason got on his stomach and started pulling himself up towards Bastard's Crawl, and the water was just pelting him in the face. With it barely above freezing, the water was like ice, taking his breath away as he pulled himself through it. After making it past an outcropping, he started into another tight passage that split into two. He paused for a second, not remembering which way to go, and because he couldn't see anyone up ahead, he decided that it would be best to climb back down and ask. As he climbed back down about 15 feet, the water suddenly surged and swept his feet out from under him and knocked him onto his back, completely submerging him in the stream. He quickly tried to stand up, but because of the way that the water was flowing, it was sucking him down and his body was acting like a cork in the passageway. He could barely keep his head out of the water and the pressure was building up around him. If he didn't get out quickly, the water would shoot him out the passage and over double trouble 50 feet down onto the rocks below. He tried to move, but his boot was jammed and the freezing water washing over him was making him extremely cold and quickly draining all of his strength. Lying on his back, he realized he needed to call for help, but when he did, water just flowed into his mouth, causing him to choke and gasp for air. After 5 minutes of struggling in the freezing water, thinking about his wife and kids, he managed to get out a guttural cry for help. Zach and Andrew finally caught up and realized that Jason was in Syria.
I said my son happy as shit ain't got basketball practice. His ass about to be in there doing some schoolwork.
His trouble. Andrew jumped into action and rushed over to where Jason was stuck. When he got there, you could barely see Jason's face above the stream of water. He yelled to him to keep his head above the water and started trying to pull him out, but between the tight space and the rushing water, it was incredibly difficult to get any leverage.
I said his mother be thinking I'm too hard on him. I just want him to be great. You feel me?
Yeah, you want to be better than you.
You know what I'm saying?
You want to be better than you.
Yeah, bro. Facts, bro. So if that mean nigga get the fuck off the game for an hour, nigga do this math book, nigga do that. He already know. Fuck that.
No, that's how you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
That's how you're supposed to be.
Jason was also so weak at this point, and the water was so loud, he could barely communicate with Andrew. So Andrew started shouting specific instructions at Jason, guiding his hands and feet to stable positions so that he
They don't understand. They don't understand
I'm telling you, bro.
that, like, school, it's going to be like this. Like, I'm talking about so fast.
Yeah.
Next time you look at it, like, you're like, damn, you in high school. Like, they don't understand how fast that shit goes.
Oh, Jesus, bro. For real, man.
And I know us as adults, we kind of look at it from the standpoint of like, hey, we been there, like, bruh, we ain't take advantage of our opportunity. You got an opportunity, like, you got mom and dad that really care about you.
Look, and it's so crazy, bro. Shit almost want me to tears because the nigga got suspended from aftercare, right? Real talk.
He got
right?
suspended from aftercare.
Bruh, real
You say your
talk.
son is 7?
Yeah, he's 6, about to be 7, May 30. But I'm like, alright, she ain't want me to whoop his ass and nothing like that. I'm like, cool, I'm shutting him down, taking everything, the tablet, everything. He not, you know what I'm saying? He not getting nothing, but he was just in there eating chips and shit and talking like he wasn't even in trouble, right? So I got on his ass and shit. I'm like, man, I jacked him up. I'm like, nigga, you need to chill out for real, Slim. We give your ass everything, bruh. You know, like, there's no reason why you acting like that at school, bruh. You not fucked up or nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like, you live a good life. Like, most kids is fucked up out here. I keep stressing I was fucked up when I was a kid, bro. You feel me? So I was stressing that, so I jacked his ass up, bro. But when I jacked him up, and I was telling him and shit, the shit almost brought me to, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm dead serious, bro. Like,
Nah, for
you can't
real.
be acting like that. Nigga, they looking at us like, how the fuck is we raising? And we not raising you like that. You jumping a boy in school with another boy, like, what the fuck is wrong
Jumping
with
him?
you? Bruh, nigga, his friend Steven.
Wait, you say your son 6?
Yeah, and guess what?
Bro, my
boy
son's
was?
6, bro. My son don't act like that,
And
bro.
guess who the boy was?
Who?
The principal's son. At each other. That's why he got suspended from the application. I feel like that's why he got suspended. Anybody's son, but mainly the principal's son. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I had to apologize to that man. Like, bro, we don't teach him to do that. I apologize. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? A man going ham right now. I apologize. Hey,
So what were they jumping him for?
man, my son told me all type of stories, but the principal told me they all was playing and they ganged up on the boy. But my son kicked the nigga in his head.
Huh?
Yep, kicked the nigga in his head, man, and punched him. So it made him not playing no more. They was jumping type shit. You feel me? I'm like, man, this nigga burned the fuck out. That shit made me mad, bro. Pissed me the fuck off, bro. I was telling him I was going through it all day yelling at this nigga, bro. Like, nah, bro, because we don't teach you that shit, nigga. We play fighting shit, but I tell you already, like, bullies is a no-no. When you jump in somebody's school, that's considered a bully, bro. We don't play that shit. You know, I don't like that. You know what I'm saying? I tell you, I raised you to beat the bully's ass. You feel me? Don't be the bully. You dig? Like, facts. And he told me, he backtracked on what I said, because I told him, if the teacher's not doing nothing, handle your business. If if someone's picking on you, you feel me? It's different, nigga. But ain't nobody picking on you, nigga. And you see a situation, go tell the teacher. So now I got it to where it's scratch that, nigga. Always go tell the teacher. I don't give a fuck if a nigga bust your lip, cause you taking it and you flipping it on me like I'm telling you to beat these niggas' ass. You know what I'm saying? You came to school. You came home one day and told me you was getting bullied. First thing I did, I called the school. We talked about it. We chopped it up. 2 days later, you come back with the same thing. I'm like, all right, look, tell the security. You feel me? Security don't do nothing. Handle your business. You feel what I'm saying? Straight up. 'Cause that's what I was told. You feel me? But now it's like you jumping people and shit. And then when I go on you about the shit, you telling me that you telling me, nah. You feel me? So now we gonna scratch that. It's just tell the teacher every time. You know what I'm saying? Remember I told you, tell the teacher every time. So now if you can remember I told you that, remember what I'm telling you now. Tell the teacher every time. You know what I'm saying? Because they looking at us like, what the fuck? You know what I'm saying? He coming out like he in the streets or something. And that's why, and bro, that's why I was telling you the other day, bro, I be taking that time to, bro, it's YouTube. Because if I'm not teaching them this shit, nigga, who teaching them? You're not outside hanging with other kids and shit, bro. It's YouTube, bro. It's the shit he watch on TV, bro. And that's what I'm stressing to his mother, bro. But she keep wanting me to lay low. I'm like, you keep laying low, it's gonna be too late. It's gonna be something worse.
It's gonna be too bad.
You feel me? Like,
it's gonna get to a point where you can't return.
Bro, I know you
No,
that shit.
it's gonna be a point where you can't return. I get it. I get it.
You know what I'm saying? She think I'm being too hard on. I'm like, nah, wrong is wrong. Fuck that. You feel me? No. Yeah.
I'm sure the subscribers want to hear that shit too.
Nah, for real, bro. Bullshit.
I'm sure the subscribers want to hear shit like that too, because that's a fact.
She too lenient on him, bro. Like, nah, fuck no. This man's spending for school. He eating snacks, ice cream. Like, I ain't having like that.
He chilling like.
Bro, he chilling on the tablet, bro. Like, man, what? Me this. You know what I'm saying? Add this every time, bro. You know you spend it. The fuck, this shit ain't sweet, man.
Yeah.
Don't go back acting like when you go back, I want you to know shit. This what happened to my fuck up here. Yeah, bro. Fuck that. If I ain't love you, I wouldn't do shit. I let you do you. You feel me? And do whatever you want to do. Tell me every time.
Pull him out. When he started pulling him out, though, the water washed over Jason's head and forced him back into the recess once again. They started the process over with Andrew shouting specific positions and Jason struggling through the torrent. Eventually, Andrew managed to grab a hold of his arm and rip Jason out through the torrent of water. When Jason finally emerged, he was wide-eyed and gasping for air, barely able to get out any words. Although they were out of the worst of it, they were still almost submerged in the stream of water. Andrew encouraged Jason to keep moving, but he was in rough shape and wanted a moment to catch his breath. Andrew knew, though, that they needed to keep moving because every second spent in the water was another second closer to hypothermia, and the flow of water was still getting stronger by the second. Finally, Jason managed to wiggle his leg free, and they were able to move further into Bastard's Crawl. Once it was clear that Jason was safe, Andrew told Zach to stay with Jason while he went up ahead to grab their bags. About 15 minutes later, he returned with the supply bag containing the Mylar blanket and immediately wrapped it around Jason. He told Zach the water was way higher and rushing a lot faster, so he should go up and join the others and tell them what happened. If he and Jason weren't behind them, in 30 minutes they should leave the cave and alert search and rescue. He also knew that if for some reason he and Jason weren't able to exit that area, there wasn't enough room for 3 people to stay. He then used the gas stove to heat up water and poured it down Jason's clothes to warm him up. Although he didn't have a thermometer to actually check, Andrew knew that Jason was likely stage 2 hypothermic. He was so cold he'd actually stopped shivering and all of the color had drained from his face.
That's crazy.
Thankfully, between the Mylar blanket and the warm water, Jason slowly regained color and was eventually warm enough to try to make it out of the cave. From where they were, under normal circumstances, it would be about an hour back to the surface, but as they started climbing out, they had to fight the rushing water with every step. The final section of Bastard's Crawl had just a 4-inch space between the water and the ceiling. This meant that they wouldn't be able to crawl through it and keep their head out of the water. With that, Andrew knew that they had to turn back and wait until conditions improved, while also hoping the water didn't fully submerge the cave. After climbing back down, they found a mostly dry ledge jutting out at a 45-degree angle with just enough room for both of them. The stream running through the cave sprayed the ledge on the outer edge, and so Andrew had Jason go on the other side to stay dry. Andrew then braced himself on the ledge as well and made himself comfortable for the long wait. Subterranean caves can have little microclimates different from the conditions on the surface. Inside Cascade, the torrent of water was moving so fast that it was actually windy on the ledge, and eventually the water was so high that it was just a few feet from where they were sitting. It was now 6 p.m. and they were still 200 feet underground, huddling together under the Mylar blanket. It had also already been 3 hours since Zach left, and they had no way of knowing whether or not their friends had made it out of the cave. It's possible that the rest of the cave had been blocked off by water, or someone else had gotten stuck or injured, or even worse, it was possible that no one made it out and no help was coming. Thankfully, though, the rest of the group did make it out of the cave, and after driving into an area with cell service, contacted search and rescue teams at 9 p.m. Rescuers immediately went into the cave to try to reach the trapped men, but the water level was too high and moving too quickly. They would just have to hope that the water wasn't filling up the cave entirely, and that the two men had found some sort of shelter deeper into the cave. Inside the cave, Jason and Andrew kept their headlamps off to conserve the batteries, and so they sat there in complete darkness, wondering if anyone was coming to help them. Hours went by, and the water slowly crept higher and higher. They couldn't sleep because the 45-degree angle they were on would mean that if they didn't focus on keeping their footing, they would slip off the ledge and into the water. Throughout the night, they would check in with each other every 20 minutes or so, and then finally, at 5 a.m., the water looked as though it had started to recede. They waited just a little bit longer to make sure it was safe, and then made another attempt at exiting. After sitting in the exact same position for 12 hours and without sleep, it was incredibly difficult to get moving again. Over the course of 90 minutes, crawling on all fours and wading through water up to their chest, they finally made it close enough to the exit to see lights off in the distance. They called out to the rescuers, and one rescuer called back, "I love you," in sheer relief at the sight of the men. After almost 24 hours trapped in Cascade Cave, they fixed their harnesses to the belay rope and slowly climbed the aluminum ladder towards the surface. In true Canadian fashion, Andrew greeted them with a cheers as he finally poked his head out of the 30-foot shaft. The following year, on May 7th, the group of men returned to Cascade Cave to retrieve some of their equipment and to get redemption for their failed attempt. They parked in the clearing once more and made their way to the steel hatch. Since their descent the year prior, no other group had gone to the cave, and so they had to brush off the dirt that was now covering the entrance. Andrew reached down and unlocked the hatch as he did the year before, the ground much drier than their last attempt. They fixed their harnesses, their rope, and the aluminum ladder once again, and Jason descended back into the cave that almost took his life. As they moved their way through the cave this time, the torrential stream from the year before was just a tiny trickle of water. Instead of wet, slippery rocks, they had rough, dry handholds, making it much easier to make their way through the cave this time. After the harrowing ordeal from the year before, the group successfully made it out of Cascade without incident. If you made it this far, I just want to thank you for watching. This is part 9 of the series, Cave Exploring Gone Wrong, so if you enjoyed this video, you may want to check out the other videos in the series. I would also highly encourage you to check out the video of this incident that I'm going to link in the description. Andrew had a GoPro mounted to his head, and so the rescue was all caught on camera. The video footage of the torrent of water that Jason was stuck in is harrowing, to say the least. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a like and a subscribe if you aren't already, so you don't miss any of my weekly uploads. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.
I'm not going to no cave. If y'all don't know me, bro. Y'all don't know watching these videos, bro. I'm not going to no cave, bro. Fuck that.